Hey, welcome to another episode of the InNOLEvation Mindset, powered by the Moran College of Entrepreneurship. I am Mark McNees, your host. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast if you like it, and be sure to share it. That is very helpful to us. So I'm really excited in studio, not really, virtually today. We have Maryam Khazraee, the founder and CEO of RXPharmacist. Hey, Maryam, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So you're our second remote guest, so we're still trying to work out some kinks. So I appreciate you raving this new kind of software with us, and appreciate your flexibility with all of that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where in the world do you live? Where were you brought up? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Were you filthy rich or struggling or middle class? And did you have entrepreneurship modeled for you? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually from Florida originally. I was born in Orlando, grew up in a little small town next to Daytona Beach, Florida. And I'll be honest, I am a Gator. I'm sorry. I went to UF, University of Florida, but I went to UF for undergrad and as well as grad school for pharmacy school. Went there for almost 7 years, finishing up my doctorate of pharmacy. As far as how I grew up in the household, I come from that first generation type of family. And I think usually with being first gen, it's like the best of both worlds because you have the hardworking ethic mentality. So you're very optimistic and grateful and all that stuff, but you also work really hard. At the same time, you live in an amazing country, right? Yes, I'm from here, I'm born here, and I was raised here. But I think oftentimes people, maybe they haven't gone overseas or they haven't traveled anywhere outside the US. Canada, Mexico doesn't count. But, if they haven't been to a third world country, they don't recognize, gosh, how amazing we have it here. We have so many rights and freedom and protections. And if you don't see how it is outside of that, it's hard to be grateful, right, for what we have. But anyways, grew up in, a pretty modest household, I would say. So we were lower middle class. So we weren't necessarily struggling, but my parents weren't able to pay for my college. I remember in my last year of high school, my mom's like, all right, you're about to go to college soon. And she had me take out this yellow pad piece of paper. And she said, write down all your expenses, your housing, your food, your tuition, just map it all out. And I did. I literally spent the whole day, I mapped it out. And I came to this number, right? I said, all right, this is the total number I need to get for the first year of undergrad. And I looked at my mom and she said, don't look at me. You have to figure that out. It's on you to figure out how to pay for your education. I was very lucky that she went through that exercise with me. And from there applied to a bunch of scholarships, Florida Bright Futures, really thankful of that type of program. I know they've been cutting down over the years. It was really amazing back then. And unfortunately now over the years, it's been cutting down. But I got that, got a bunch of scholarships and, undergrad, I had no student debt whatsoever. Went through, working 2 jobs in school, scholarships, everything, and luckily had no student debt. So I'll stop there so I can go on for hours on this.
Oh, that's really interesting. You didn't mention, where's your family originally from?
Yeah, so my dad is Persian by background and my mom is French Canadian. And they actually both came to this country when they're 17 years old. And typical type of immigrant story, right? Only had so much money in their pockets, worked awful jobs to survive, and worked really hard to achieve their U.S. citizenship, right? How they met was an interesting story. I may not go into it too much, but they both went to school in Louisiana. Hurricane was coming by, and they were both at a hurricane shelter. And my dad met my mom, and my dad's, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And he claims that he saved my mom. And I always thought this was a fake story, but he said, I saved your mom from Karam Parish. And I always thought it was like a La La Land story. I was like, oh, this is fake. But one day I looked it up. One day, I'm like, holy crap, he's right. There's a city in Louisiana. It's a parish. And if you know what that means, it means it's not big enough to be a city or even town. Population less than 1,000 people. And my mom was working at a lab in a hospital down there, living in a trailer. And my dad's like, I went to visit your mom, a billion mosquitoes because it's out in the whole boondocks. And I'm going to get you out of here. They moved from there to Dallas, Texas, lived there for a couple years, and then from there, Orlando. And then that's where I came about. And everyone's still in like Florida still. We like the state.
Oh, that's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that. So when did you know that you wanted to become a pharmacist? Was that at a young age or was that during college? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was at a younger age. So I was very lucky to go through programs during high school. So in my household, just family environment, school was the number one priority. Took the books, study, pretty typical for that immigrant type of mindset of you can only choose between three types of job careers: lawyer, engineer, or doctor. That's it.
Right.
And the reason that they think like that is because they want to make sure their kids can at least get a job that is able to be more financially stable. That's at least the like mindset. I'm not saying that's true, but anyways, that was the options we had as kids. So my brother took the engineering route. I took the doctor route, but in the beginning I did engineering. So went to engineering, started that out. I did not like engineering whatsoever. It was very difficult. So I respect a lot of engineers because the thinking is very different. So then I switched over to pharmacy instead. And I pretty much was pretty set on pharmacy by the time I started undergrad.
Where do you think that came from? What drove that interest?
I think part of it was family influence, like I mentioned. I think another is I like to help people. I love science and math when I was going through high school, but I also wanted something where I didn't have to deal with like blood and guts, like going through medical school or nursing, things like this, where you do get exposure to those things. Pharmacy is like that profession where you still learn a lot of the scientific and medical information, that clinical information. You still make an impact on patients. However, you don't have to worry too much about cutting somebody open or things like this. It's a very clean type of environment.
Okay, that's interesting. So you were really interested in that and just straight through. Did you ever work as a practicing pharmacist or did you go straight into starting your business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how I came about in starting RXPharmacist was when your last year of pharmacy school, you have to do something called rotations. Essentially, you go through and work at these different practice sites. They could be the hospital, retail pharmacy, things like this. And I remember I was on one of my site rotations at Publix. Publix has a pharmacy in there. Mm-hmm. And I was on the bus, taking the bus to Publix, and my brother called me. And my brother's older than me, so he graduated a few years, past me. And he's, what do you want to do? You're about to graduate in about 8 months. What's your plans? And I said, I'll just go and work as a retail pharmacist. And he's, that's it? That's all you want to do? You can't do better than that? So he challenged me. And he said, why won't you challenge yourself? And when that conversation ended, I remember that same night, I downloaded audiobooks. I started reading books on business, entrepreneurship. And I found out that my school, UF, had a big idea competition. Most schools offer this. I enrolled in that, got with the College of Business. And at that time, it was still RXPharmacist, but it was different. This is back in 2015. And I was pitching and creating an idea of where pharmacists can talk to patients through virtual means. And that was pretty new back then, basically telemedicine. I know nowadays everyone's familiar with it because of COVID, but back then that was a pretty novel concept back in 2015. So pitched that, got to the state level. And when I went to the state level, that's when I got a lot of good feedback from the judges saying, we don't know if this is going to work. Like patients, they can just go to their local pharmacy down the street, talk to a pharmacist. Why should they come to you? Insurance companies also said, we're not going to reimburse you guys for it, for the models. I was trying to think, gosh, how can I pivot this? And how I pivoted was the true story of how RXPharmacist got created and pivoted from that was one of my classmates. He had 3 little boys. His wife was a school teacher. And he had a full-time retail pharmacist job offer in hand. And if you know anything about pharmacy, when we graduate, we usually max out close to it to our cap employment earnings on the first try when we get out of school, usually within the first couple of years. And then after that, you can't really increase your pay as much. You can in different ways. So what that means is it's a lot of money that you get paid when you work in these retail types of pharmacies, when you're transitioning from a student to that. But anyways, long story short, we have to pass these licensure exams. So there's two main exams for pharmacy. One's called the NAPLEX, National Clinical Exam. The other one's called MPJE, State Law Exam. Every state has one. And he called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning crying. He said, I failed my exams. They not only took away my job offer, but they fired me from my current job. And if I don't figure out something soon, I'm going to be homeless in about 2 months or so. We relied so heavily on that job offer that it took the wind out of him. So got with classmates, helped him study back up, pass the exams. We helped him get a job, get back on his feet. And about 2.5 months later, he called me saying, thank you so much, but you have to do this for everybody. So that is how RXPharmacist truly got created with what it is right now to this day and age.
What a great story.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting. So you started this around 2016, is that correct?
Yep. So 2015, I graduated. That was when I was going through the whole telemedicine thing with RXPharmacist. And then 2016 is when I pivoted to this idea of, wait a minute, there's a gap in the market. People need a test prep resource. There was one major competitor in my space. All the students were using it because we had no choice, but their content wasn't that great. It was outdated. It was about $1,000 for the study book. And that's hard as a student, right? You can't really afford that much. And I said, gosh, this is a monopoly. Like, I had to change this. So it was a number of factors that kind of wanted me to create for the company. Now, keep in mind, how I did it as an entrepreneur was a very risk-averse approach. So I'll be honest, I'm a risk-averse type of person. But how I did it was I built the company on the side to begin with. So you asked me earlier, hey, what'd you do, when you graduated? I still worked as a pharmacist. So I graduated, worked as an ICU pharmacist in the hospital. I then moved on to health insurance. So moved on and worked at Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield and Prime Therapeutics, their pharmacy benefit manager. Then I commissioned in as an officer in public health service, went up and worked at the FDA up in Silver Spring, Maryland. And throughout this whole time, I was still growing RXPharmacist, my evening, weekend side hustle. Back then, I still ran it as a virtual company. So all my team members were work at home, virtual back then, which was back then it was novel, but nowadays we take it for granted because of COVID. But, and I would recommend that to other types of entrepreneurs, depending on your idea, because some people say, oh, you should go all in. But on the flip side, if you go all in, right, and you're stressed out on paying your rent, you're not going to be that great in growing your company because you're so stressed out on just financials and everything going on. My advice to people that are trying to get into it, depending on your idea, if it makes sense, is to grow it on the side, right? Evenings, weekends, continue trying to test out your idea. If you see traction, then that might be the tipping point for you to decide to go all into it. But don't quit your job tomorrow and say, I'm going to be this type of entrepreneur, because it's going to be harder if you're very stressed out.
I always marvel at the burn the boats entrepreneur who this is going to work or I'm going to be homeless. And I marvel at that. That's not me. Clearly, it's not you. I like the side hustle and get some traction and build it that way. And I get both arguments going both ways. Hey, if you're not fully committed, I think you can be fully committed and have a paycheck, making sure you're paying the rent too. But it really comes to the individual. I'm glad that you pointed that out. So when you think about your business and how it started, tell us about where you're at right now in the business. Is this your full-time job now? And what's it look like going forward?
Yeah. So still not my full-time job just yet, but it's getting to that tipping point where we've grown the company pretty significantly. And I would say it depends on your strategy, right? Not all companies are meant to be venture capital backed companies, right? You can also have what's called a lifestyle business where it's making money each month. And it could be something where you eventually sell the company down the road. So a lot of mom and pop shops in the small business world are like this. They're more lifestyle types of businesses. If you wanted to go to the venture capital backed route, then you have to really show that it's very scalable. hitting those type of metrics, because those investors, that's what they want to see, right? They want to see, all right, can you scale this? Can you increase the users? And essentially, can I get my return on investment within 5 years? And can I 10x the amount of money that I invested in your company? There are two different types of investors. There's ones that are more on the passion, emotional side of it. And there's other ones that are strictly on the financial side of trying to see if they can, get a higher multiple return on investment. So I would say with my company, it can go both ways, right? Currently, it is functioning more as that lifestyle business. I've never had to raise money or equity or anything like that, because it is a profitable business. It's cash flow positive. It's been profitable since day one. And the reason for that is because we have really good product market fit. And we're also, the people that are on the team, we're also customers too. I told you my story of how we got started. We really know our customers very well because we are the customers.
Right.
So I would say with anyone starting out, know your customers, and please do not go the route of we will build it and people will come. That is a failed, that doesn't work for that type of strategy. You need to build something that people are looking for and people actually need. And I think that's a more successful way of doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. Speaking of building, you've built a beautiful website and it's very easy to navigate, and well done with that. And you have all your course offerings, and all your price points are significantly lower than $1,000 a course.
Yes.
And I like how you can package different courses together and things like that. How do you typically drive traffic to your website?
That's a great question, because with any business that you make, marketing and sales is the lifeblood of any type of company. So for us, how we do it at least is we are very SEO optimized. When you do a quick search on Google trying to find these test prep materials, we usually show up on the first page, depending on what type of keywords that you use. Another is we are a very service-driven company. What I mean by that is a lot of the funds we get from selling these products goes back to supporting the pharmacy profession. What I mean by that is we offer summer internship programs, fall internship programs. We just started rotations this past month with University of Minnesota. A lot of the funds we're getting, we're putting them back and putting them into these students to help educate them. And that is another marketing awareness for us, because we give so much to them to help them succeed. And guess what? When they graduate or when they go back to their school, they start talking about us and saying, hey, I interned at this awesome company. They're amazing. And oh, by the way, they are creating these test prep resources we need. So they tell their dean, they tell their pharmacy school. And then from there, we start getting these emails and calls saying, hey, my student said this, can we set up a demo session? And then that's how we've been growing our B2B arm of the business.
No, that's great. I learned about your business and you through the Jim Moran Institute, who we partner with at the Jim Moran College. Obviously, we're one big happy family. And we were able to get connected with you because you went through JMI's, Jim Moran Institute Small Business Executive Program. And I think you did that in 2022. So about 6 years after you started your company. How did you hear about the JMI Small Business Executive Program, and how did you get connected?
Yeah, I think I did it in 2022 or 2021. I can't remember exactly what year I did it. I got connected through them. Gosh, I think through this type of email blast. I remember getting some email that they were looking for folks to do this type of program. And I was in Jacksonville at the time. And I said, yeah, why not? So I went ahead and did the program. Great type of program. So I highly recommend folks that they do have this GMI type of program in their local area. I believe you said there's one in Jacksonville, one in Tampa. I'm assuming one in maybe Tallahassee. I'm not sure.
One in Tallahassee and one in South Florida.
Yeah. See, you guys are expanding. That's great. So yeah, I think there's a lot of these different types of programs, and the way I look at it is if you have the time, if it makes sense for you, depending on what stage you're at with your business, to just go for it. I think the biggest benefit of these type of programs, not just what you learn, but it's also more about the network. You meet other business owners, you talk with them. They're going through the same struggles you're going through. and they may be in different time frame as you, right? So they may be either ahead of you, behind you, at the same spot. And those of them that are ahead of you, gosh, what a great opportunity to ask them and say, hey, I'm going through this right now. What did you do when you were at that time? And sharing those lessons learned among each other is really impactful, because now if you can get advice from them and what they learned from it, that might save you a ton of money and a ton of time instead of having to go through those years making the same mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. So what kind of stands out is some of the challenges that you've had starting and running your business?
Yeah, in my case, it's time. So as you can imagine, I'm still balancing everything out. And I would say with any type of founder, it's time. There's so many things going on, so many things that are pulling at you, and you really have to make sure to be protective of your time. And also taking the time to recognize all the efforts that you've done. I know sometimes we get to be so hard on ourselves, right? And say, hey, I know in our society day and age, unfortunately, they glamorize the unicorns and glamorize these folks that started out with these startup companies and went to crazy types of company valuations. But you have to recognize there's a journey to that. That's not something they did overnight. That took a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of partnerships, people that helped them along the way. So I would say definitely recognize your people, your village, and people that can support you to get to that goal. Be protective of your time, and also take some self-grace and recognize that, hey, it's okay to fail. Hey, it's okay to make a mistake. As long as you learn from it and improve, that's what counts. And lastly, if you do make it to the top, let's say you are a future unicorn founder, please don't forget about the people that helped you along the way. Give back. Think about your teachers, the schools, your parents, the community, all those things that kind of helped you get to where you got to be. Please don't forget about those people so that we can continue that cycle in society, because life is short. We all have a timestamp on us, but isn't it great to leave almost like a legacy, a system that can continue making more successful people that can impact society and impact our society more positively?
That's a great word. Thank you, Miriam. At the end of the podcast, I always like to ask this question. If you could go back to 2016 or 2015, before you started your business, and you could tell that Miriam one thing, what would you tell that Miriam?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Looking back, I'll be honest, I wouldn't change anything I've done. Even at that point when I was trying to figure out what is RXPharmacist, is it a telemedicine company? What is it? I went through all of that research basically to figure out, do I want a venture capital backed company? Do I want to fundraise? Do I want to test out the market and, still pursue other career opportunities to get more experience? I guess if I was to go back, I'd probably say giving yourself more self-grace. I tend to be hard on myself and saying, hey, let's do more and more. But at the same time, taking a step back and recognizing all those efforts that you went through to go through that. What I mean by that is when I graduated high school, my parents are like, hey, let's do a ceremony. And I'm like, it's just high school. And then when I went to undergrad, my parents are, oh yeah, let's celebrate. And I'm like, it's undergrad. And then when I got to my doctorate, they're like, okay. And I'm like, fine, let's celebrate for that small little party. But at the same time, it's no, you should celebrate those little milestones that you go through, because I know we all put a lot of hard work into achieving our goals. So I think just making sure to self-reflect and look back at all the hard work that you've done and look forward very positively on what more is there to come.
Fantastic. That is a great spot to end on your that good word and celebrating those wins. I am very guilty of not celebrating small wins or even big wins. I just keep on pushing. So that is a very good word. Really appreciate you coming in today and sharing your story. Very cool, very fun, and very inspiring. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the InNOLEvation Mindset. If Again, if you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe. Also, share it with your friends and families and your colleagues. And then also, we love comments. We answer all the comments. So please leave us a comment. Tell us what you want to hear, what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like to see more of. We will see you next time. Thanks.